Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to those in Belém or wherever it is your morning. I'm Adrian Rimmer, and today is day 6 of Pop-Up COP. Saturday is a working day during the COP process, and so we are also bringing you our daily update today. Tomorrow is the day of rest, both at the COP and also here, and we'll be back on Monday. With that, I'll hand over to Nicola, who will introduce our guests for today.
Hi everybody, welcome to Brixton. Actually, you can see the city behind, and this is a view from one of the amazing bars called Bird's Nest in Brixton, South London. Today we have Alessandro with us, Alessandro Vitelli, who's going to give us a wrap-up of the week. And then we have Divaldo Rezende speaking, who is the Secretary of State for Environment and Water Resources from the state of Tocantins. I've known Divaldo an awful long time, and he's a great friend, so we're looking forward to his comments later after Alessandro, and I'm sure we have a great wrap-up from you. Thanks, Alessandro.
Thank you. It is Saturday, the first Saturday of COP. It's traditionally the day when the subsidiary bodies who've been handling the talks in the first week, they scurry around trying to wrap up their agenda in order to pass all the draft texts up to ministers on Monday. So far, the UN website is showing almost no texts from the first week. There's a couple of minor decisions. For those of you who've been around for 20 years or so, there's a text out there which is looking forward to the very, very end of the Clean Development Mechanism, the original carbon crediting program that was developed under the Kyoto Protocol. That still has some options for a final turn-off, switch-off date. Either the end of this year or the end of next year in most cases, but that text will be sorted out next week. There is also a text on the carbon markets under Article 6.4, which is still got some good stuff and some not so good stuff in it. There's a lot of open questions about things like methodologies, permanence of removals, and how to guarantee how a carbon, carbon stored in that nature projects can be permanently guaranteed, monitored for many years, and that's still to be discussed, and it may be sent down to a more methodology-based, project-based assessment rather than a policy-based approach. So those things have arrived on the website, and they're going to be taken forward later today and then on Monday. At a high level, COP is still struggling with 4 key issues that were tabled as potential agenda items at the beginning of this COP. The first is basically, how do we assess and reflect on the NDCs that have been submitted by countries around the world? We now have more than 100 of them. But
and the NDC is, Alessandro?
Our nationally determined contribution. It's each country's self-binding pledge on emissions reductions and climate action in general. And together, they're all supposed to come together and drive us down to 1.5 degrees Celsius, that is. Now, there is no mechanism at this COP. There is no agenda item. There is no forum to consider those NDCs together. And some countries were upset about that, and they tabled an agenda item saying, can we please discuss these NDCs and whether they are good enough? That was the first one. The second one was transparency reports that have to be submitted by countries every 2 years, showing that they're doing what they say they will do. There's another one. Another issue is tabled on finance. Article 9.1 of the Paris Agreement just deals with finance flows from developed to developing countries. That's not on that wasn't on the original agenda. And lastly, and possibly most controversially, the agenda proposal for a discussion of unilateral trade measures, or in Europe, that's known as CBAM. A lot of countries are thinking that is something they need to discuss here. Now,
can you say what CBAM stands for, please, Alessandro?
Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. It's basically a levy on the carbon content of products imported into a country, in our case, Europe. It's basically saying that European producers should not be disadvantaged by competing with imports from countries who don't have a price on carbon. Those 4 items were tabled to be put on the formal agenda of COP. the Brazilian presidency said, no, we're not going to put them on the agenda, but we will have presidential consultations on them. Now, those 4 issues are being discussed in these presidential consultations, but a lot of parties are concerned that there's no way in which to reflect those discussions in whatever decisions are made and whatever documents and texts are produced at this COP. So we're having quite a bit of a battle on those issues, and they keep cropping up in other areas of the talks. For example, discussions on how to build a pathway towards a just transition that doesn't disadvantage developing countries as we move away from fossil fuels. Trade measures have been brought up in those discussions, and that's seen as basically mission creep. These issues which don't have a home in the agenda are popping up everywhere else and making life more difficult for everybody. So that's a decision that the presidency has to make in the next day or two, how to deal with those 4 issues, how to encompass them in the outcomes of this COP.
And are there any other issues that you're particularly interested in or surprised about, or anything you'd like to flag before we hand over to Divaldo, please?
Well, I'm really interested in the CBAM issue, because that one is it hits all of us in our pockets, as it were. Countries who produce materials to export to Europe are finding that they will be assessed the same carbon price as a European producer. Now, they're arguing that's not fair. Some countries have threatened to take this whole thing to the WTO, to the World Trade Organization, and try and have it reversed. The Europeans are also worried about what happens when a European producer exports from Europe to a country that doesn't have a carbon price. He's disadvantaged because he has high costs, and the country they're selling to doesn't have a carbon cost. So it works in both directions, and this is really gumming up the works, if you like, of international trade. It's become an issue that every country is concerned about.
This is great. This is just what we're talking about, though. It's all about finance. How do we get prices moving? How do we get the economy reflecting the urgency of the climate crisis, I would suggest. Divaldo, thank you, Alessandro. Divaldo, give us your perspective as Secretary of State now in Tocantins for Environment and Water Resources. Thank you so much.
Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be here. I think this is my COP number 20. I have been participating in several COPs, and each COP has some specific subject. They are calling this COP as the COP of the implementation. Of course, there are several topics that should be considered to implement all the proposals that we have on the table. But the interesting thing that we see in Belém is that the huge participation of indigenous people and a lot of pressure from the gender side, a lot of pressure, things that is not so common in COPs around all those years. But it's been quite a great experience so far.
And can you say
as a home COP? As I say, it's your first home COP, I imagine, and so that must be quite interesting in its own way.
Yes, it's true. I participate in Brazil in 2 other summits that is previous from the COPs. That was Rio 92 in 1992.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we were there. And also 20 years ago, the Rio +20 summit was something completely different. And Belém is in the Amazon region in Brazil. It's very peculiar. It's a huge city on the middle of the forest. Of course, the forest is part of the livelihood, but we are in a big city, it's a life of big city. We need to have energy. We need to have sanitation and everything. It's necessary for the humans to have the same level of comfort that the citizens of São Paulo or London, or somewhere else,
Divaldo, I would like you to focus and make sure that you talk about what you're doing in Tocantins. We keep this to time, so we have 6 minutes. Could you please talk about what's important to you? Thank you.
Tocantins is a very pioneer state in Brazil in terms of climate change. Tocantins created the first carbon sequestration project there, the Bananal Island Carbon Sequestration Project. This project was very important strategically because was when the concept of social carbon born, and also we create a research center there called Canguçu that is receiving students from all around the world, more than 20 theses, PhD, master sciences, you know, it's something very positive for worldwide. 5 years ago, Tocantins State started a new strategy that is the jurisdictional RED. RED is reduction emission from avoid degradation and deforestation. Plus, the plus means conservation of forest together with the reduction of deforestation and also reduction of degradation. This is a quite innovative strategy. It's part of the voluntary market. Tocantins is using a standard called ART3, developed by an American organization. And this organization is leading the JRED around the world. But Tocantins is the only first subnational state that has a potential to be issuing credits in 2-3 months. And this is quite strategical because we are talking about 20 million tons of JRED credits. And the JRED credits has some specific characteristic. For example, you need to have the participation of all the stakeholders of the states. You need to do the consultation with the local communities, indigenous people. We did more than 60 meetings and all the dialogue with the different sectors, including the productive sector, the government sector, the smallholders, the indigenous people, and so on.
Valdo, can you explain what the jurisdictional bit is, extra to RED?
Jurisdictional means in a specific area. In the case of Tocantins, is all the area of the state that is 27 million hectares is part of this project. We are talking about 277 square kilometers of the state of Tocantins. But on that state, only 10 million hectares of forest is being calculated in terms of emission reduction.
And can you,
another important point is that the corporate buyers, they are very interested on JRED because JRED is coordinated by government level. We had some years ago a lot of trouble in terms of private projects of RED in the Amazon region and other regions around the world. And the JRED is a kind of alternative for private projects that focus on deforestation, because the responsibility for the deforestation in a jurisdiction is from the government. The government has the power to make this happen in terms of reduction and to give the subsidies necessary to really change things in a region, for example.
It's really important, that aspect of it. Can you tell us, I mean, you were, we got to know each other when you founded Social Carbon while I was at Gold Standard, and I'd love to give us a sense of how your engagement with this project and program has been influenced by the work you did at Social Carbon, the types of things that has enabled you to bring in.
We have 1 minute.
Sorry.
Okay. No, this is very important because JRED should be very, very social. We have two important things that is defined internationally from the COPs in Bali and Cancun, that is the safeguards. And also we need the benefit sharing very clear for this kind of projects. All the resources from the selling of the credits should be very transparent, should be used for the final beneficiaries. And Social Carbon it's very positive on that. And we use some of the strategies on Social Carbon to meet with the local communities in the sense to do all the consultation in a very transparent way. I think it's very, very important to have a dialogue in this kind of projects, you know. It's important, not just in a specific meeting, but, you know, the consultation should happen all the time. All these people should have the trust to go ahead and to make things happen together with the government.
Divaldo, before we close, thank you. I promised people on LinkedIn that you would explain the two pictures that I posted from the Tocantins website. So people can Google JRED Tocantins and the site will come up. Can you tell us what the pictures are, please?
There are two pictures there. The first one is the harvesting of a gold grass, a grass that only grows in Tocantins, and the local women are using that to make art crafts, bio-jewelries. The second one is a man on the middle of a soya bean crop. Is a soya organic bean crop, to be more precisely.
And this is part of your project?
It's part of the project because, you know, we work with the quilombolas, the members from that region for the gold grass, and also with smallholders, medium and large stakeholders too. We need to work with everybody and dialogue with everybody. This is the main point and the main challenge of a project like this.
And this is the main idea from Pop-Up COP, that we all need to work together, and we're trying to engage with a wider audience. So we're going to close today. Thank you for joining us, Divaldo, Alessandro and Adrian.
So
It's great to see you on a Saturday lunchtime, South London to Belém. And speak to you soon. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work.
Bye. So